says here that your question is, you have a comment about religion providing major benefits to society in two ways that you feel it's going to be hard to get rid of religion until we fill the gaps.
Right. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Great. So I think the two major societally important things that religion offers currently that I can think of are emotional comfort to individuals and a sense of community.
Okay.
And those are because people tend to be kind of tribal by nature. So,
sure.
Being able to be part of the same club, whether it be different aspects of nerd culture or sports or having different teams you're fans of, whatever.
Sure.
And I don't know how we're going to, because it's usually very community-based, because geographically, and that can be really valuable. And I think that's good. I think it's a really nice benefit that it offers. I just wish it didn't come with all the extra misinformation and shaping minds to not form reasonable thoughts.
I think that your call is particularly suited to Mandisa here, because you're saying that, hey, how do communities offer more community and more emotional support in order to, allow people to leave a religious context? And I think what Mandisa was talking about when she first, came on and gave her introduction was, we're a small community and we're a very religious community. And so I would think that those two issues and that kind of support and community is very, very much an issue for the people that Mandisa works with.
That, and I would offer some counter to that, because particularly within the religious community, is that yes, there is a sense of community and support, but it often comes at that emotional price that if you don't submit to these ideas, then somehow there is something wrong with you. So yes, the underlying the underlying tenets of these communities and these institutions aren't ultimately beneficial, or I would argue that they aren't. And also this idea of conformity, that you need to belong to this, you need to belong to this community, or else you may be ostracized, or else you may not get anywhere. So some people might think that that's and I'm not saying that it's every church or every every religious institution. There is certainly power and strength in numbers as well. And we can't forget that, religion, the church has had a huge head start. And also the way they've been able to do that was to instill this sense of power and fear. And so we are combating that, yes. And also the notion that religion is the only institution that can offer fellowship, that it has a monopoly on fellowship. And it really doesn't. And it takes a matter of people being able to rethink that notion, that you can build community out of anything.
Yeah.
And really, it just takes, we're not saying that everyone should leave the church, that everyone should, because if people are comfortable in that, then, and if that's what they feel, helps get them through their lives, then that's totally fine. But for those who are, and it may be beneficial, like I said, it may be beneficial to some individuals, but for those who aren't, who don't believe in that anymore, sure, there are some things that the secular atheist community, there are some models that we can take from churches in how they organize, without all of the dogma and without, all of the premises. There are certainly a lot of things that, that we can learn from. Does it mean that the church is the absolute foundation on that? No, because when you're dealing with people, then that's what's going to happen. And yes, this idea of being tribal or having a safe space or gravitating towards familiarity, that is something that, yes, that we are always, contending with. And I don't see that necessarily as a bad thing unless you are gravitating towards something that will ultimately infringe upon the rights of others. And we've certainly seen that happen. But yes, are there certain things that we can take as far as building that support for a better community, yes. But there are so many people who have been burnt by the church and their religious experiences that they are still recovering from them, hence recovering from religion as an organization. True. And so people need to understand that anything that takes collective efforts will need for people to support it. And I think that there are many people who just aren't finding that in churches anymore, that they have found that many churches do tend to be emotionally manipulative. And there's nothing wrong with cultivating or providing emotional support, but when it does have a foundation of manipulation, or that you are just bringing people in under the guise of being friendly, but then ultimately that changes, or you have to give up your sense of agency. That is problematic, even if initially it seems like it's doing some good. So that's always that we always have to examine that part, and I would argue that ultimately it's not that good in the long run, and it hasn't been.
I think what you just said what Mandisa is saying reminds me of something, because I gave a talk on religion and family values. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I found when I was doing my research is that families that, or religions that are not authoritarian, that do not hijack the family in service of the church, tend to be a little bit healthier.
Yeah.
So what happens is, like, it's no different than having your kid join the soccer team and the whole family goes out to the soccer game.
Right.
And you engage in that, and it's like it's not like the family exists to serve the soccer team.
Correct.
Right? And so soccer becomes this thing that everybody can do together, and you pack a lunch. Yeah.
Yes.
You go down there, cheer for Sally, and everybody's happy, and then you come home and you won or you lost, and you go get ice cream, and it's just like an outing, and it's fun. And some churches work that way, right? Where they support the family, and the families can have different views or different ideas, and they can still go there. And if one of the kids doesn't believe, it's not a big deal, and you're going to go work in the soup kitchen whether you believe it or you don't believe it. The family's going down, and we're going to help tonight. And it's just sort of a thing that the family does, and nobody's going to get kicked out of the family because they don't support the church. And on the other end of that spectrum is what Mandisa is also describing, and that was one of the things that I found, was the people who are like, if you're not on board with the church, you're out of the family. And so it's literally this situation where the church has hijacked the family and said the role of the family is to support the church. And if you're not on board with that, you're outside. But there's other church examples where the church becomes like a thing that says, hey, we're here to support families, mm-hmm. and that's what they're doing. And when those churches happen, they're just not rigid and authoritarian. And they're just sort of there doing activities and stuff, and they might have a lesson on civics, being a good person or something. Jesus tells you to love everyone, and that's sort of the extent of it.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying, is that, it certainly does offer people something, or they wouldn't keep going. And like Mandisa is bringing up, sometimes it comes at a huge cost, and sometimes, depending on the church, it might come at a low cost and be a big benefit. It just depends on how they're running it. But yes, those are things that people need, and if they can't get it outside of a church, that's going to be tough, because basically they're going to have to make decisions about whether or not to stay in churches that might be toxic.
And I would say that, yes, even calling out our own community, we do pride ourselves on our intellectual capability and our logical thinking and critical thinking, which sometimes can seem very cold, which can be very off-putting, especially depending on who we're talking to. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to take everything personal, but showing empathy is going to be a huge part of how we continue to build that community, and understanding the different perspectives that people are coming from. It will make a huge difference as to when people leave religion and they leave the church, how we are able to handle that.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Jacob? You started to say something, I cut you off.
I didn't want to cut you guys off. I think my point was that religion is, in my own personal experience, which is limited, always been a negative thing.
Okay.
I was never a believer. One thing my parents did actually well was let me figure it out for myself. But the few times that I have been to any religious churches, they've always been negative experiences. So my personal opinion and view on things is that I would like religion to just be left behind. I don't want to force people out of it. I just want to give them a better option.
Sure.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
There's a certain irony to Left Behind, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a whole pamphlet series. It's called Left Behind, and it's just funny that you're like, I would like religion to be left behind.
Yeah, well, I think it's outdated. I think that, at least in our particular country, I think that some of the positive religious groups that you described sound more like they reflected the ideals of secular humanism more than not.
Yeah, and they do. I think those churches are very, very non-worried about whether or not the Bible aligns with everything they're saying or doing. And, they're more into just community aspects like you're describing.
Right.
Yeah. I think one of the issues that I've had is that I guess my main problem is I haven't looked very carefully, but I'm not passively aware of organizations in the secular humanist vein that draw in any similar capacity, but I guess they might also not solicit to the same degree either.
Well, I don't think you're going to find something that, if you're saying draw to this similar capacity that religious churches or, that churches are packing them in, I think you're not going to find that.
Yeah, and I mean, you have organizations like the Sunday Assembly. You have your chapters of larger organizations like the American Humanist Association. You do have Black Nonbelievers, for example. You have student groups like with the Secular Student Alliance, Recovering from Religion, which I do help facilitate and as a partner organization. Yes, we have the ability right now to advertise on a larger scale like the religious institutions do? I'm sorry?
I feel like I may have drawn the topic a little off by suggesting that the advertising was an issue. I meant more awareness.
Well, yeah.
I suppose.
And I think that's something that I do think that that's something that we should be doing more of. And I think that there has been an apprehension because when we think of church or when we think of outreach, we see the example of, people who are religious pushing their beliefs on other people, which is very intrusive. And many of us tend to shy away from that, understandably, because we don't want to infringe on people's rights the same way they have been done to us. I do think, though, that is important for us to increase our visibility and show that we are here. Not to say that, well, you just absolutely should reconsider everything and join us. But if you are interested in information and you want to, then come on, because we do think that there should be more awareness. And this is how we capture those who didn't know that we were here before. So I think there should be a better more efforts to at least do more outreach, and also by doing things that are considered good works that other religious people would do, and that's how we gain that exposure, and how that's how we draw more people in as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to stand on the corners or just push, but we can do more by the actions that we take.
Is there anything else? Is there more to it?
I actually wrote myself some notes.
While you're checking your notes,
sorry?
I was going to say, while you were checking your notes, I was just going to announce again, Valentine's Day with Secular Sexuality Show is going to be followed by a Shelley Siegel concert at the Chateau Bellevue here in Austin, and tickets are $30 a person. I'm letting folks know again, and also after show dinner starting pretty soon.
Yes, and thank you to Wayne Lewis, who just made a donation to our website.
All right,
so
Wayne.
We appreciate the support.
You're getting a cheer. You're getting an audience cheer. I'm sorry, Jacob. I figured while you were looking at your notes, and then you were quicker than me, so.
Fine. I guess the only other thing I saw with that was I'm frustrated because I don't have like an idea of anything, any actionable things I can do to help push, even in my own like part of the region of the country, like things towards that direction. Because I think that religion negativity is kind of ingrained in society on a unfortunately deep level, and moving away from that is critical, but also challenging.
I agree.
And what area of the country are you located?
He's in Portland.
In Portland. Oh, there are a number of secular groups in the Portland area. As a matter of fact, Black Nonbelievers has an affiliate group in Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
So there are a number of groups there. Are you signed up on meetup.com?
Yeah, I have an account there, but I'm not signed up to very much.
Okay. That's a really good tool. You might want to utilize that because it isn't just about these social events. If you type in secular, humanist, atheist groups in your area, you'll at least find one or two.
Yeah, even skeptics. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can search under.
And they also
great.
post any service events that they're doing as well. Like if they're participating in any service projects, cleanups, helping the homeless, or there are all types of events that are posted there. And they don't necessarily require you to be a full member unless you want to. So yes, I would definitely start there if you want to find other secular groups in your area.
Sweet.
Okay.